Hello, everybody, and welcome to tonight's reading and Q&A with Meera Dasgupta, hosted by the Muse Writers Center in partnership with Urban Word NYC. My name is Susan Deutsch, and I am the Community Events Organizer at the Muse. This event is the fifth in a series of virtual events called Diversity 2020 Dynamic Voices for Change. Over the course of 5 weeks, the Muse has been hosting readings, panels, workshops, and more that center and celebrate the voices of writers and artists of color in the Hampton Roads area and beyond. All of these events are free to the public and will be accessible on the Muse website after the live stream has ended at the-muse.org. If you would like to sponsor one of these fabulous events or the series as a whole, or if you'd just like to donate to the Muse, there is a link in the description box and on the website. We're going to jump into the reading soon, but before I get started, I'd like to tell you a bit more about the Muse Writers Center. We're based in Hampton Roads, Virginia, and are one of the largest literary centers in the country. We offer creative writing classes of all genres for all levels and ages. Check the-muse.org for a full list of our online classes and workshops. The Muse offers tuition assistance for all who need it. We do not turn anyone away. Last year, we gave away almost $30,000 in tuition assistance because we firmly believe that nothing should get in the way of someone who wants to write. The Muse also offers hundreds of free literary events each year, teacher readings, book launches, writing clubs, and much more. Coming this month, we have a lot of exciting events, including the closing of the Diversity 2020 series a week from today on November 21st, which features 3 amazing events that we'll talk a little bit about later. In addition to all of this, the Muse offers programs for youth and teens, and here to talk a little bit more about this is our program manager, Rebecca Coxwell.
Hey guys, so our teen fellows are wonderful writers. What the Teen Fellows program's aim is really to provide a community for teen writers to learn, to share, to grow, and to get into the writing community as early as possible so that they can get to opportunities earlier than they would otherwise, and so that they see all of the options that they have as far as careers in the writing community. So here today, um, we also have, like we mentioned, Meera Dasgupta, and she is going to be doing a reading, and then right after, our teen fellows are going to get an opportunity just to ask her a few questions about writing, writing careers, and things like that. So first, I'm going to talk about Meera, and then I'm going to introduce her and just let her get started. Meera is 16, and I believe she's actually the youngest National Youth Poet Laureate. Um, she has been, she's done countless performances, um, including things that have been featured by the New York Times, PBS, Apple, Teen Vogue Summit, so many things. She's wonderful, um, and she sees no limits. And I hope all of our writers believe the same. Here's Meera.
Hi, thank you for inviting me. So, as said, I'll do and read a few poems for you, and we can just get started. So, this first poem is called Lineage, and it's one that I wrote fairly recently during Climate Week. And currently, during the pandemic, I am becoming more aware about the world around me, and I've worked towards climate action and artivism. And I feel like we can bring these global social issues to the page like I did for this one. Lineage. We do not inherit the earth from our ancestors. We borrow it from our children. A Native American proverb. There is a mother here. Her skin has known the salt of broken oceans. Her hands have traced the sun until it became her. She learned respect from a father and his hands, how the bones of dead flowers made their garden a burial ground. Her body was her family's burial ground, her mouth an untamed flame. It escaped and left her with a vase. In it her reflection appeared and shattered. There is a brother here. He's learned to breathe air as dark as his skin. There are no lights in a city of stars that do not reach him. Some days he feels paper weight, in his dreams he's flying. He's forgotten the smell of grass and his mother. He's forgotten the sounds of the wind, what it means to fly. In his dreams he carries a star in his pocket, but it burns from the inside out. It reminds him of himself, that there is a burning within him. There is a father here. He overflows into his mother's garden. Her flames lick his stubborn skin as he swallows the ocean whole. He writes odes to himself until his blood becomes a dead rose. And as the sea levels rise, as they run like a crimson-mouthed psalm, as children curl like wayward leaves, as storms shake their sea blue hands, as these hands overturn burial grounds, as burial grounds become his mother, a father becomes a son in mourning. There is a daughter here. She has been taught how to sustain on seeds, but to never settle for them, to treat the grounds as she treats her body, to till the earth until she too is the sun. When morning arrives, she finds the shattered reflections of her mother and recalls the pieces. Countless oceans converging where she stands. You can hear an echo of lineage, the sound of 1,000 daughters, mothers, sons, and fathers. How they become a garden, how their voices bloom among the scattered bones and carry, like seeds, to wind. And that was my first poem titled Lineage, and I just wanted to show how these issues are cyclical and generational, which is why youth voices are especially important right now. So for the next poem that I'm going to read, it's called My Poems as Victims of Gun Violence, and it's one that I've read countless times because I feel as if it's pertinent to today, because these are the issues we should be activating upon, and these are the voices we should be listening to and should uplift and empower. My poems as victims of gun violence. This is where my poems go to pen their eulogies. They bleed a black ink and find a casket that blends well with the ground. I do not know if my poems prefer gardenias or roses. The rapid firing of a gun leaves my poems bloated with sudden death, judgment, a narrative in which they don't have a name. America remembers the anniversary of my poem's memorial, lights a candle but forgets that my poems are not love poems. My poems are students tearing up the streets in their new Air Jordans, are teachers holding the Big Apple in the palm of their hands, are janitors mopping the floor of the mess that other poems have left behind. My poems aren't bulletproof. My poems bury friends before they bury themselves. My poems sob when dissecting frogs in biology class, have gloves on so the blood can't streak their hands in transaction. My poems love their mamas, still kiss them on the forehead before going to bed. My poem shot a fizzy glass of white privilege before it shot them in the forehead. My poems pray to God sometimes. My poems reread horoscopes. My poems do not pretend to know the future, so they walk to the horizon and stay there. Shatter the sky until their bodies parch the light of their names. Dance in the shadows until they are but one. Writhing black mass in the distance. Their death, eclipsing the sun, where they stand And that was the second poem that I'll read for you. I feel as if it kind of encapsulates what's happening in the world right now, and I just wanted to share a piece of what's happening in my world, in New York City, here, right now, to you. So the third poem is a quirky one. It's one that I wrote a while back during the spring, and sometimes ideas just come to you, and this was one of them that happened probably at midnight that I just started writing in the morning. So this is Yo Mama Jokes. Yo Mama Jokes. Yo Mama Parks manifested a black magic school bus from the backseat of the American dream. Yo Mama Earhart signed a contract with the clouds and stayed there. Yo Mama Googes beheaded the patriarchy before she died in its embrace. Yo Mama Cleopatra danced naked in the Nile before she became a queen. Yo Mama Kahlo used culture as a coaster for her canvas. Yo Mama Hurston let God bleed a manifesto off of her 100 tongues. Yo Mama Sappho knew to cook her poems raw. Yo Mama Angelo roasted white privilege on a spit like a squealing pig. Yo Mama Truth exhaled a revolution in pursuit of her name. Yo Mama Curie discovered that women can be radioactive. Yo Mama Tubman embraced the railroad and the soil and the loud that were her limbs. Yo Mama Ride swallowed the stars and grew herself a galaxy. Yo Mama Mirabai twisted her hands in prayer for a God she did not fully know. Yo Mama Yousafzai found her savior at the back of a bullet. Yo Mama Steinem scorched the earth until nature didn't need a mother but a woman. There is a joke somewhere in this poem, but I can't seem to find the laughter to accompany it. This poem was one that I created in order to celebrate all the women that came before me, because I think it's important to remember our histories, because again, this is a cyclical time that we're living in, and if we do not acknowledge the people who have paved the way before us, we can't actually pave the way until we know who and where we're coming from. And I think I want to share this poem as the last one that I have, because it's important to me to tell you why I write as an individual, because I think writing for different people means different things, because it's not only for an audience, but writing is for yourself. And this is why I write. Why I write. When the dead foam at the mouth of the Hudson, when brown boys get shot down like mad dogs, when guns impregnate graves with children, when Mama Nature leaves her anesthetic behind, when death bleeds like a brown woman, when a man beats his wife to bleed like death, when suicide becomes an antidote for America, when the American flag is the whitest thing on my body, when my body becomes the darkest thing under the sun, when my son eats bullets instead of burgers, when white Americans forget their immigration status, when we forget that nothing is ours to give anyway, when people ignore the recycling bin, when the closest they get to recycling is colonialism, when the F train segregates itself, when the train becomes the example for a broken system, when students have to protest the system, the government, the declaration, the democracy, I raise my pen and write the nation into the ground. And that was my final poem, because like I said, I believe that it is students and young people who are uplifting the nation and will continue to uplift the nation in the years to come. There's so much change happening now, and I know a lot of people say 2020 is canceled, but I believe that it is a turning point. So thank you for having me here and bringing me into this space. I'm glad to be able to share it with all of you.
Thank you so much, Meera, for sharing your poetry and sharing your thoughts and your voice on this. I feel like this was more than a reading. I felt like you were embodying everything you were saying. It was really beautiful to be able to watch. So thank you. Now we're going to turn it over to a couple of our teen fellows to ask a few questions. And I think we'll start with Evelyn. Evelyn, do you have a question for Meera?
Yes, I do. What advice would you give to any writer, no matter their age or how long they've been writing? What would you suggest to do if they've been struggling to put their thoughts or their emotions onto paper?
Yeah, definitely. I think there's two parts to that question because we're talking about young writers and also putting thoughts to the page when you're struggling. So I think, first of all, like I said before, writing is for yourself. It's something that you can do on any given day. But I think something that's not as talked about is sometimes when the world gets too much, perhaps you just want to sit within yourself and let these thoughts and emotions rush over you, because poetry is a means for lethargy. It's a way of providing a piece of you in front of you and allowing you to reflect. And I think for a lot of teen writers, that can be scary sometimes because it's almost like a diary, but very visceral because you include so many details and so many explanations and metaphors sometimes. And other times you're just being real. And I think that something to remember is that this, again, is for you. It's something that you're using as a tool in order to express yourself in a world that can that's part of many things, and that continues to move in a place where we're all at home. And I think that being like, especially right now in the pandemic, the fact that we're all at home, we can use poetry to see our homes in a different way. I mean, I sometimes look around and I see a thing or an object and I say, wow, I didn't notice that before. That's something that I didn't really realize was there. And if you truly are struggling, if you're a teen writer, first of all, or a poet, and you're struggling to write, I think the first thing you should do is look at your environment and look within yourself, because even struggling to write is an emotion too. You can draw from it. And I think that the most interesting poems can even come out of nowhere. So I think you should really, if you want to start writing, or if you are a writer, whatever level of experience that you have, begin writing on the page, whether it's a list or even a few words that just pop into your mind. Writing is improv sometimes, and you can hold yourself to that. So I think that's a piece of advice I would give.
Amazing, thank you. And now we'll hop over to Kira. And after Kira asks her first question, I'm going to put all of you on the screen at once, and you can have a bit more of an organic conversation so y'all can continue asking questions and talking back and forth. But first, we'll head over to Kira.
Hi, could you describe your writing process a little bit, like whether you go to like a specific place to write, whether you have to find like specific times like around school and everything?
Yeah, and I think to answer that question, when I first began writing, let's say elementary school, because um, there was a certain freedom that we had, a creative freedom, because I remember being able to handwrite all my things. Now we have to type everything, which is definitely different, but you could write. I remember writing 50 pages just handwritten, and my words were probably very large back then, but I remember being so proud of being able to write 50 to 100 pages of books or just things that came out of my imagination. And I think that right now I've tried to use my art as a means for activism. So I've looked around on the news and watched, or rather listened to the Daily and the New York Times, which has a lot of things to pull from. And even just taking a walk outside with my mask on right now and social distancing. But I think that if I were to state a formal process, the best thing that I do for myself is to sit down in a comfortable space, a safe space, and just begin writing, give myself a prompt, even if it's looking up and seeing a light or thinking back to my day and seeing something like a fairy tale. Sometimes in my English class, we read stories. So I think, oh, we talked about oceans today, and I write a lot about lineage. So it just really tying that in is something that's important. And again, I would like to reiterate that sometimes poems can come from out of nowhere. One of my first poems for New York City Poet Laureate, Youth Poet Laureate, that I used during the competition, the main poem that I used prior to the lightning round, I actually thought of it on the train, on the R train particularly. I remember very clearly because of the orange seats and the fact that I was coming home from school. But I was just thinking, what if I add the alphabet? What if I create something with the alphabet and related to Uncle Sam's alphabet soup because of the letters, and I related it to society and voting as well. So I think that sometimes you can find prompts for yourself, but other times, if you just have a random idea, you should just jot it down. Like Yo Mama jokes came out of nowhere. That was something I didn't really expect, but it ended up being a really fun poem to write.
Thank you.
Who would you say is the person that inspires you most to write? I know sometimes poets have objects or experiences that inspire them, but I feel that people are also important. So, who would you say is the person that in your life most inspires you to write?
I think first and foremost, I have to say friends, family, and the people who are closest to me. And I know it sounds really strange because you'd think that perhaps I'd look to someone who's been writing or a world leader or someone who has been working and organizing currently. And I think definitely I look towards them as being beacons for me. And I've looked in history as well and seen so many people who have also paved the way, like I said before. And in a conglomeration, they're all inspirations to me. But I feel as if in order to write, it's been very important that I have a safe space to write and being able to facilitate conversation. And I think talking to other young people, especially, has been something that has allowed me to find inspiration for my writing. But I think it started out with being able to talk to friends and family about these issues and questioning the world around me. Because at the time, I remember, let's say in 8th grade, I didn't know too much about what was happening in the world because we didn't really see these people on TV or in our media. Like a long time ago, I don't think I would have seen someone like me on the TV or in spaces of politics and leadership. And now clearly that has changed. I'm slowly seeing a sense of diversifying in terms of not only our political leadership, but in the classroom and abroad. So I think that it's definitely changed, but in terms of the experiences that have shaped me the most, I think I have to say the people who are closest to me, because without them, I don't know who I would be right now. And I think a lot of my writing has to do with my identity, and that's been shaped by those around me.
Thanks. Kara, did you have a question?
Yeah, so I wanted to ask, like, when you approach your writing, is it more often the case that like you seek out inspiration for new ideas, or inspiration comes more spontaneously? Which I realize you kind of sort of already answered that question. I'm assuming it's a little bit of both, but if you want to talk a little bit more about that.
Yeah, definitely. And I think being able to reiterate would also be helpful, because I think that sometimes with writing, you really feel like once you sit down, the ideas just have to start flowing. And sometimes people have writer's block and they get so frustrated because they don't know how to write, what to write about. And I remember for a while I would write things and I would look at it and say, wow, this is really not going the way I wanted it to go. And when I write essays for school or even creative writing pieces in general, I would look at the piece and I would rewrite it so many times and still be unhappy. And I think I can go further with that question because I think first drafts are very important. Even if you have a spontaneous idea or something that just comes naturally, or if you're just sitting down and writing something on the page, the most important thing is first and foremost is to just get it down. And this can mean, I remember one of my most favorite places to write before the pandemic was this really small coffee shop. It's really small. There's 2 or 3 chairs there towards the side, and there's tea, and I get a tea and then I just start writing. Um, Sometimes on my notepad or even on Google Docs or just with my notebook that I carry around. So I think that it really depends, and your environment is also very important in terms of writing because it's one thing to write in a place that's very noisy. Perhaps that's a space that you write best in. Perhaps you like all of these different stimuli that help you write. But for me, I think that I find the quiet spaces and spaces where I can be with my own thoughts very important. Like, not only the coffee shop, but the train that day was almost empty at night. And now, because I'm in upstate New York currently, so there's a lot of trees and mountains. I wrote Lineage here for Climate Week, was surrounded by trees and a lake and rivers. I saw a rabbit. There's a lot of things here to draw from. So I think that your environment and the people you spend time with and all of these external factors can play into the way your ideas come to you, whether spontaneous or you sit down and write for an hour a day organizationally.
Thank
So,
you.
would you recommend carrying some sort of journal on you at all times if you're trying to be a poet? Like, I know you can use the Notes app on your phone, but does having a physical copy, like a physical book, help you?
Yeah, definitely, because I know that for different people, um, they write in different through different mediums as well. And I know for some of my friends, they really do love journaling. I remember one of them was teaching me how to journal and with all of these scrap papers and things. And I took a class actually. My junior year, the first semester, it was called Writing to Make Change. And we were required to carry a notebook with us for the entire semester and just write about what we did that day and have a picture, draw a picture, write about our day from start to finish, a list, and then have some creative part to it. And I think it was really interesting because we often don't think about what we do in a day. I remember I normally forget things very quickly. So if you ask me, oh, what did I do on Wednesday last week, I would probably have to rack my brain a little bit in order to figure it out. But I think it can be definitely helpful for some people to have a physical space where they can write as if it's um, just a space for them to keep all of their thoughts and creative work conglomerated. But I know for some people, having their phone or some other space to write, or even a piece of paper can be some place where they can find solace in their writing. And I know that it happens in movies. I don't know if anyone actually does this. I think I may have once written a word, but on a napkin. If you don't have anything else and you're just sitting there and there's a napkin. One time I think I wrote a word or something because I was trying to recall something that I wanted to write about, and I just got a napkin and I quickly wrote it down. So yeah, I think really any medium for writing should be fine.
What are some of your favorite topics to write about besides like activist topics?
In terms of what I write about currently, it has been an influx of what's going on because so much is going on that this is the way I kind of cope and find joy in the day by just writing it down. and being vulnerable with myself. But in terms of other things that I write about, I do try to write about just experiences in general from my perspective. Prose poems are really, I love writing prose poems because they read like a story almost. And a lot of poems do have that arc, but just there's something about not having to be contained by grammar or English grammar, English sentences, and punctuation. I remember, like, for my prose poems, a lot of my poems are not capitalized. I don't know why. I just started writing that way for no reason at some point because I just like how all of the words just remain at the same level together. And for my prose poems, oftentimes my sentences are cut in that the periods and punctuations don't necessarily follow what you'd expect of sentences. So I think just being able to write stories into my poems, no matter what I write about, is something that I enjoy in terms of just writing on a daily basis, or even really shorthand poems when these thoughts just appear in my mind.
Who are some of your favorite like poets to read, or just writers in general, like favorite novels? Well, maybe you don't have to get too specific, but what do you like to read?
Yeah. In general, if in terms of poets, one that I have stated that I was reading right now was Patricia Smith. I've been reading a lot of the work that I've seen on poetry websites as well. And I do like spoken word poems on button poetry. I've perused many videos in button poetry because I not only look at it as something I do as a hobby, just watching people perform, because there's something really powerful seeing people read their poems in addition to reading them yourself. But I've also done and watched these poems for speech team, and currently something that I've been really happy to do is that currently I'm in a lab in speech team. That means myself as the lab leader, and we have two people we're working with who are junior varsity speech team members. And what they do is that they peruse different poems, and they create a collection of poems and prose in order to read at competition. So it's basically competitive poetry interpretation. So just hearing them read has also been something where I found inspiration, because I remember I've been working with them since last year, because they were freshmen, now they're sophomores, and just to see them grow and start really interpreting poems by people on the internet in books, and finding poems and poets that I never would have thought of, because to really find these poets, there's so many talented poets out there that you really have to dig deep into the internet to find, and just to see them be able to spread these words and into these spaces, and show judges and people who may have not even thought of these issues before, the issues they create their collections on, is just so interesting and inspiring, because I think that it's something that's helped me grow. And I'm really happy because one of them actually got really into spoken word and is now applying to many things for spoken word. So I was really happy to see that and be a mentor to him.
That's wonderful. Well, we're coming close to the end of our time, but before we go, I actually have a question for all three of you. So Meera, you're with Urban Word NYC, among many other things, and Evelyn and Kira, you're of course teen fellows here at the Muse. And so I'm curious what it means to you, all three of you as writers, and especially as teen writers, to have a community around you, and specifically a writing community. So if you could each talk a little bit about what that means to you.
Yeah, I've been talking for a while, so I kind of want to hear what the teen fellows have to say. So yeah.
I would say, as a teen writer here in Hampton Roads, having a writing community really helps me figure out specifically what I'm wanting to write. So I started off as a poet, like I solely wrote poetry, and now I've started exploring more prose, and I feel having a writing community that we have resources and people who support and are able to critique on both ends is very important and very helpful for when you want to branch out.
So I'd say for me, finding like the writing community with the Muse was like really transformative in my just journey in writing, because before the Muse, like I knew I loved to read, I loved literature, but I'd never really like written on my own. I was kind of scared, you know. So doing the fellowship really helped me, like being surrounded by other really great writers who like are also discovering what they want to write. Like it just gave me a great environment to like sift through different things that I might like and kind of like, you know, push aside things maybe I don't like and like go to different, just trying so many different things. Like I originally thought I'd be more into prose, but I kind of found myself gravitating towards poetry a lot recently. So it's been a great environment where I'm not like so afraid to like try new things because I'm like with other writers. Because in my school, there aren't really, and just in my friend group, there aren't really other people who like love to write and stuff or like love to read. So finding that with the Muse has been really important for me in like getting my journey going.
I definitely agree and really love hearing that as well, because in New York City, I would join, prior to becoming US Youth Poet Laureate, I was in so many different poetry cohorts across the city that I would see the same people so many times and just say, oh wow, hey, I know you from here. So it's like I have a whole friend group now that's spread across all the boroughs. And I feel like the poetry community has been like another family to me as well, because just seeing everyone being so accepting of all of my identities, because again, poetry is so vulnerable, and just being able to speak in front of other people and have these first drafts. And I think poetry is also an experience for the audience, because you hear the snapping and clapping and all of the people saying things, words of congratulations while you're up there, is just so amazing. And also just being in the audience and watching other people perform is just something that I was drawn to, like I think you were, but it was something that I also wanted to be a part of and be able to make change within the community as well, and uplift and empower other people. And currently, like, my school is primarily a STEM school, so finding the poetry community at my school was a little bit different, because I know that not a lot of people had a certain love for literature and the humanities and the social sciences, but I was able to create those spaces for myself and find people who may have not been drawn to poetry um, before I used to talk about it, because I really try to pull people in. I've said to so many people how amazing and life-changing it can be. And the kid who I was mentoring, who I was talking about in speech team, who became interested in poetry, he and we founded the Stuyvesant spoken word team this year, and I'm captain, he's president. So he's going to continue that as a sophomore for the next 2 years. So I know that I have done my best in trying to make a difference in my school, and hopefully that community will continue to thrive well after I go to college.
That's wonderful. And thank you so much for coming here and bringing a bit of community to our virtual, socially distanced world. I'm really happy that all three of you could join us. Meera, thank you so much for, beyond reading your work, for sharing your poetry with us. Evelyn and Kira, our stellar team fellows, thank you so much for being here. And thank you to Rebecca. And for everybody who's watching this, whether live or after the fact, thank you so much for joining us and coming into the Muse Writer Center's writing community here virtually, though it may be. On behalf of the Muse, I'd like to say a big thank you to all of our sponsors. If you'd like to become a sponsor for the Diversity 2020 series, or if you'd just like to donate to the Muse, click the link in the event description. If you're interested in the Teen Fellows program, the application is now live, and there's more information about the program and a link to the application also in the description. The next event in the Diversity 2020 Dynamic Voices for Change, are next Saturday, November 21st. We have at 3:30 p.m. Eastern, a panel with 3 fantasy authors, followed by a reading in partnership with Teens with a Purpose at 6 p.m. Eastern. And after that, at 7 p.m. Eastern, we have our final event of the series called Music and Verse, featuring local Hampton Roads musicians, spoken word poets, and a closing reading by Luisa A. Igloria, the Virginia Poet Laureate. Again, on behalf of the Muse, a big thank you to everybody who's watching, to everybody who's here on the call with me. It is such a joy to be able to share art and poetry with people all over. And check us out at the-muse.org if you're interested in classes or more upcoming events, or again, our Teen Fellows program. Thank you all for joining us. Stay safe, stay healthy, stay creative, and have a wonderful night.